Hello everybody, hope you are all doing well. So it's been a while, a couple of weeks since the last kind of update video I did regarding the Enterprise build. There hasn't really been much news since, it's kind of still the same. We think there is a potential buyer for Eaglemoss as far as these build-ups go, and there are also people interested in continuing the range of models that they release from time to time, but I guess for now it is just waiting on official confirmation. Now whether that's going to be weeks or months, we don't really know. I'm personally not anticipating anything until maybe the start of next year now. But that's my personal gut feeling, that's not based on anything I've heard. So what I thought I'd do right now, and this is something I kind of intended to do for the last video until I actually learned that people were interested in Eaglemoss. I was going to kind of do a little bit of a post-mortem, because I kind of felt at that point the ship might have been dead in the water, but there's positivity about it, so we don't think it is. So this isn't a post-mortem, this is just kind of like a little bit of a mid-build review. My estimate is that we are about halfway through, maybe a little bit past the halfway mark. So it seems like a good opportunity to kind of talk about the build so far, my thoughts and feelings on it. There's loads and loads of videos going back from the start of the build where I've kind of spoke about my feelings on it as we've gone up, but there's nothing that's kind of collected all my thoughts in one go. So I don't want this to be too long, I'm not going to keep it for long, probably about 10 to 15 minutes. So let's just start taking a look at this bit by bit. I've got it all next to me. So we'll start with what is probably the smallest, well, the first thing we kind of did, and maybe one of the more iconic parts of it beyond the saucer, and that is one of the warp nacelles here. So we started the nacelle in the very, very first issue, kind of building the base of it. I kind of think they wanted to get some of the iconic stuff, progressing quite early on. Now, the nacelle is quite a weighty thing. It was quite awkward and fiddly to build at times. Keeping this in line as you were pressing down other sections was difficult. There was also an issue where they had sent out the wrong colour of these, if I remember correctly, so that had to be rectified at a later point. The other thing that was quite awkward building here are these little LEDs that you see here. They had to kind of press them in. They didn't really fit in properly. It was immensely awkward. That's going to be the sort of word you hear a lot throughout this sort of review. It's awkward. Now, the one thing I did have with this as well is once the battery box was in and all of this was together, I found it did not light up despite everything being connected. Absolutely fine. As you can see, I have got it working now, and it really looks the part. It looks brilliant, and it made me so happy to see this lighting up and working, but that doesn't negate the issues I had with it. What I actually had to do was kind of take a little bit of foam, press it down, so that the battery made full contact. Like I say, it's not really something I kind of wanted to do. The other thing I will say is that when I found there were issues with it, this bit had to come off, and I found that the little plastic pegs were at risk of snapping. It's sort of the problem with anything like this is you put it together, not necessarily the easiest thing to take apart, but that is short kind of speech about the warp nacelle. It feels really nice and weighty, it lights up really nice, but at times it was hell to put together. So the next bit, which is kind of one of the complete bits, is the Cobra Head. So this was sort of the first thing we kind of completed, and as you can see, it looks really, really nice. Again, it's got a really nice substantial weight to it. So what happened here, I had got not the wrong battery box, but the battery box I got did not work. Also, there were these little pegs here, and these are what you use to connect it to the saucer section. The set that they sent me were incorrect, so I did have to wait on a replacement for that. That's not really a big complaint. I think with something as big and complex as this, you're going to get a lot of issues where people have sent the wrong parts or broken parts. It's kind of luck. You could have 1 in 1,000, but that one person, it really sucks to be part of that one. The one complaint maybe I do have here that I've seen a few people is this does not necessarily sit completely flush. You can see there's a little bit of gap there. I'm not personally too bothered. But the other thing which is a bit awkward is your batteries are located in here. Now, it's really hard to get into that in case you need to replace the batteries. I think you're going to need like a screwdriver or something to pry it open. Now, personally, I would have liked to have had something that would have just made it easier to get into that battery box. I know the idea really is to have it as clean as possible and such, but, you know, just the batteries are going to need replacing in this at some point. Make it as easy as possible to get in there. However, we can turn it on, and you can see all the lights on there, and it looks absolutely wonderful. You can see the lights in the back there. You can see the pulsing like navigation lights. You can see the front, the photon torpedo launcher. There's a little bit of light bleed coming through here. That is possibly just down to user error. I've always maintained from the very beginning of this, I'm an amateur when it comes to building these. I've never built anything quite as complicated as this in my life. You know, the most I've done is Lego, which isn't exactly complicated. But one of the things that drew me into this is it promised it was quite easy for beginners, which more on that as we get towards the saucer section. So the next part we come to, and this is one of the unfinished bits. I'm saving the saucer section for last. There's not really a lot to say about this, but we've started building the kind of base of the hull, the battle section, the star drive. Not a lot to say here. You've got your typical kind of PCB there. There's not really much going on yet. And we've got the section that goes on the bottom of that. Again, there's not really anything to say. It looks nice, it looks the part, but it's horrendously unfinished. It's not attached to it, so we can't really comment too much. What we can kind of comment on though is we've got a section on the rear of the ship now pretty much complete, and this is where your warp and cell will attach to. So we've got this little bit here. This felt really simple to kind of make. Threading the cables through was absolutely fine. The only complaint I've got is that they give you this sort of electrical tape, and it doesn't really stick very well. It's quite frankly very poor, so not really very impressed with that. And sometimes, like in this particular case, I can kind of see one of the LEDs is sort of protruding out. Until we get this attached to that rear star drive section and put all together, I can't really comment too much on this, but you know, as you can see, once you combine it with the nacelle, it looks really, really cool. It's going to look awesome when that is finally done. But yeah, this little bit, quite easy, put together, a little bit fiddly because of the LEDs. And again, we'll talk about the LEDs with the final part of this, which is the biggest part overall, the heaviest part, our saucer section. So this is kind of where the bulk of this little mini review is going to go, because I've spent so long doing this. You've got a big metal skeleton there, which consists of both sides of the saucer, and then you've got a collection of metal and plastic panels on top, with more little plastic bits going in here. There's a lot of small parts here, a lot of cables and general annoyances, and because this has been out, it's a little bit dusty, sorry about that. But there's your saucer section. So this is the bottom half of the saucer, and I'm having to kind of hold it like this because we've got a battery box here which is not set in place yet. There's no way to kind of set it in place, unfortunately. So I'm going to try and show you the other side of it when we can. But this, as you can see, it does light up. It looks bloody wonderful when it's lit up, and sort of in a more darkened environment than the one we've got here. Obviously, I'm recording this in general light. But yeah, it looks great. The one thing you can probably see straight away, some of my panels aren't exactly flush. Now this is what I kind of alluded to earlier. So let's have a look at the top of it, shall we? That's the top of your saucer. So let's talk about it and put this down because it's heavy. So, the saucer. The skeleton, the metal frame was quite easy to put together. That wasn't really much of a problem. The problem started when it came to the mixture of the panels and putting the panels on there. So when you make the panel, generally what you do is you put your smaller escape pods in the panel, then you might get your LEDs, slot them into place, and then put a panel over it. Now, it doesn't sound complicated, and it's not complicated. It's just very, and here's that word again, awkward. It's incredibly awkward, because you're holding a piece in place while you're also clamping a plastic thing over it, and then you've got to get a screwdriver and screw in the screws and hope that one or more parts has not slid out of the way. Now, by and large, most of them weren't too bad, but there were a few ones where you'd have to thread them in, and because the cables obviously twist around and act however in a various length, they get disjointed and one thing pulls out. And then what you do is you take your panel and you sort of attach it onto the saucer, screw from underneath, and make sure you kind of thread your cables through. So here are the issues with that, which some of you who've watched me put this together will have seen. The instructions don't necessarily give the best indication of how to thread the cables through. And even when you have got it in place, sometimes it doesn't necessarily screw in the best fashion, because you've got these like LEDs with like a plastic coating that you have to twist down and kind of set it into place. And, you know, once you get one panel on there, it's fine, and then you build up the next panel, and that sits kind of flush, but then you build up more and more, and you start to get, like, ones in between. They don't necessarily go in the best way. They're not going to sit flush immediately. There were numerous times where I'd put the panel on and try to push it down, and it just wouldn't sit flush with the screw holes. And it was immensely frustrating. It was very aggravating at times, and I would look up on the Facebook group where people have had very similar issues. They were more experienced model builders, people like World of Wayne, who didn't necessarily have these problems when I looked at his videos myself for kind of guidance on it, because he's an experienced model builder, so he probably knows his way around it. People like me who were a beginner, who was promised like a very beginner-friendly guide, I don't necessarily think it reflects a beginner-friendly approach. I think there's just too many LEDs, too many cables, and just it's very, very fiddly to get right. Now, most of it I've managed to get fine, but some of those parts just don't necessarily sit completely flush. It's probably not noticeable to most people, I think, but it's noticeable to me, and I think anyone out there who's watching this who is, you know, creative, has had that struggle. My partner's an artist, and she's done art where I've looked at it and went, there's nothing wrong with that, and she'll go, but I can see something wrong with it. And the thing I work in, I've been sick. I work in game development, and there have been things that I've seen where I go, oh, that's really annoying. Other people probably won't notice that, but you know it yourself when you do something. So the saucer section has probably been, and it looks wonderful, which is why I don't feel like I want to complain too much, but it has just been so awkward to put together. Now, I don't have the solution for how they could have done that better. There are more experienced people than me who have suggested they could have gone with a different approach for the LEDs, and when I've read what they've said, I went, oh, that does make sense, but it's obviously wrong beyond me. But I do think that saucer could maybe have been done a bit better. There are so many like cables in there, and I'll just try and show you that. But you can see there's three PCBs there. There's God knows how many. I'm not going to count that now. You know, I only want this to be 15 minutes. So it is just a bit of a mess with the saucer. The other kind of question I do have is, and this is one that has came up quite a bit, that saucer is very heavy. The rest of the parts are weighty, but not quite as heavy. I do question how that saucer is going to fit on this and the star drive and not continuously tip forward. I've got the stand over there as well, and I haven't got the stand out. But I do question, how is it going to sit on that stand? These are questions that people were bringing up over and over again, and I don't think people got satisfactory answers from Eagle most of the time. So I think it's a question that whoever takes over this build is going to have to answer as soon as they announce what they've taken over it. When someone does take over it and go forward with it, I do wonder what's going to happen, because I think there's so many complaints about it leading up to it, and a little bit of a bad taste has been left in many people's mouths about it, so I do wonder. I don't think they can change too much about it. It's too far gone to really go back and change things like the LEDs and that. It would be too much, too much of an expense. But I do think they want to try and continue it and hopefully alleviate some people's fears with it. So I guess, now we've had a look at all these parts, it leaves with the questions. There were two big ones. One of them was, when I first thought of it, if they brought it back, would I continue it? My initial thoughts were yes, I would continue it. Then I had a little bit of reflection. I thought, actually, will I continue it? I feel like I kind of owe it to myself because of how much I've already put into it and how far along it is. I do kind of feel like I will continue this. But I'm not necessarily the happiest about that because it's a lot of money and I think it's been quite a while as well. As time goes on, I've kind of went, oh, well, I've done other things since. Would I do another one of these build-up projects is the other big question. Based on my experience with this, nope. I got this because I love Star Trek. I'm a huge Trekkie, and I love the Enterprise D, and the chance to build your own Enterprise D was what appealed to me. Many of the other model kits, unfortunately, don't appeal to me, but if they were to do another Star Trek-themed one, say they were going to do the Enterprise E, or Voyager, or, Deep Space Nine, or something like that, the answer's no. I wouldn't do another one. I genuinely, even though I've said I'm going to continue it through to the end and see it through to the end, I don't necessarily think it's been worth the money. Don't necessarily think it's been worth the time invested into it. I don't think the quality of the build is there. I think there's been a lot of frustration in putting it together for something that was promised as a beginner-friendly one. So I don't think I would do another one of these. I get much more joy out of building Lego. I get much more joy out of building the little Gundam model kits. You saw me build on this channel the PlayStation model kit. I absolutely adored that. That was really fun. I'd probably get more joy out of building like smaller kits than this sort of big investment, which is, again, it's going to look great when it's done, and the idea of having this massive enterprise is going to be great, but unfortunately, I don't necessarily think it's been worth it. They would have to do a hell of a lot and show a hell of a lot more in advance for me to want to do it again. But with that said, I just realised we're heading towards the 20-minute mark, so I think I'm going to leave it there. But yeah, that's kind of my little sort of review and thoughts on the ship so far. Let me know in the comments what you all think of it if you've been doing this as well. I know there's many of you who have been watching these videos who have done this and have many thoughts. Some of you are incredibly angry, some of you not so much. I'm keen to hear that whole range of things because I think it's very healthy to have them sort of discussions. I don't like it when people go too far. I just want to put that out there. I have no control of what you do or say, but, do think about, the kind of things you do sort of say. Don't go too over the top of it. But yeah, I'm very keen to hear. Are you going to continue this if you are in the same situation as I am, or have you sacked it? Did you sack it earlier? That kind of thing. I will try and get, if we hear any news about things, I'll try and get another video out about it. But I think for now, they might go very quiet on the Enterprise D front until we hear more. But in the meantime, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this. Leave the likes and comments. I'm very keen to hear your thoughts. Have a look at the other things on the channel. I've been doing some Twitch streaming lately because I've had very little else to talk about on here. So go give me a follow on that. Go check it out. I try and stream on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and we've been doing Sonic Origins lately, but I might do more things as time goes on. Yeah, thank you very much for watching this. I'm trying to wrap it up before the 20-minute mark. Everyone, take care of yourselves, that kind of thing, and I will see you again in a future video. Goodbye.